things to consider. I mean, obviously, the token answer at the outset of all of this is that every individual case is different. And there's a lot of dependables here. But what I'd say, some buzzy things that everybody should keep in mind are, firstly, looking at the institutions and the geography of where you'd like to stay in Canada. So there are a whole lot of institutions in the Toronto area, in Ontario more broadly, which is a province in Canada, but just as well there are in Alberta, where Calgary is located, and there are in British Columbia, where Vancouver is located. So identifying institutions and the geography is really important. And then once you identify the institutions, it's making that application. Pretty much every Canadian institution is ready and willing to help international students with applications. So whether you have some guidance from an education consultant, that's great, or reaching out to the institutions directly. They have dedicated staff members pretty much everywhere to assist you in applying. So if and when you apply, submitting transcripts, perhaps a letter of recommendation, depending on the program, particularly if it's a postgraduate program. That's the first step. Receiving your acceptance letter is important. And confirming your acceptance, it confirms your acceptance into the program, and you use that acceptance letter in order to apply for a study permit. That's part of the study permit application. Another part of the study permit application would be a need to provide proof of financial support. And that's proof that you have the money to support yourself, and if you're bringing other family members coming with you. There are particular guidelines that you'll need to fulfill. All of this stuff is on the Government of Canada's immigration website. I won't go through everything, but just know that you will need to show proof of financial support. And there are some limitations as to, you have to have had the money in your account for a certain period of time. So you can't just transfer money in last minute. So they're going to want quite a storied history of your accounts to see that you do have, in fact, the financial support in Canada. And then obviously your identity documents, they have to be valid and accurate. You'd be surprised at how many of those identity documents are not. And the Canadian immigration takes that very seriously. And should documentation be out of date or falsified, then you'd be barred from applying again for 5 years, I believe it is, could be 10 years. So things like your birth certificate, if you're bringing family, your spouse, a marriage certificate, your passport, having those documents ready for when the time comes for a student visa application would be important. And then I guess what I'll do is just kind of quickly run down a checklist to ensure you meet the eligibility requirements of the Canadian study permit. So you need an acceptance from a designated learning institution. So not every institution, particularly post-secondary, which are those colleges I spoke about in universities, are designated learning institutions. Those are approved by the Canadian government. So to welcome in international students. And the reason that the government does that is because there needs to be certain policies in place in the institution to make sure that international students are supported. And there is a list on the government website. Again, all you have to do is Google Canada DLI, or Designated Learning Institution, and there's a drop-down menu, and you can find institutions within that qualify. Again, the proof of financial support is very important. Supporting documentation will vary depending on what country you're coming from and what citizenship you have. And in some cases, there are some, if you have citizenship in a country, but you're residing in another, that complicates things a little bit. Not to say it's impossible to apply, but you just need to supply more supporting documentation. And, preparing your application and meeting all the eligibility requirements, gathering all of the documentation is important. And obviously, the institutions themselves will help you with that. Normally, they'll have an immigration consultant specialist on board with them, or at least they'll sort of refer you to somebody who's good if you need that assistance. And all of this stuff is submitted to the IRCC website in Canada. So I'd say that's kind of a long-winded response to you, Ed, but I think it is important to
No.
keep in mind that, you know, identifying where you want to stay in Canada is something sometimes overlooked. There are sometimes cases where students rely a lot on education consultants. And it's important to recognize that, you know, it is a business, and some education consultants won't have institutions under contract in an area or a region that you want to attend. So they may direct you somewhere else. So it's important to just keep that in mind and understand that first and foremost, you identify the institution and find a
Sure.
consultant that can help you if you want to use that. And then also to keep in mind, Canadian education, you know, as we're always kind of compared to the US, is considerably cheaper. Um, for instance, in 2018 and 2019, the average annual tuition for an undergraduate international student in Canada was around 27,000 Canadian dollars. And in the same year, the average tuition for a student in an American university was around 46,000
Right.
US dollars. So that's even more. So just, you know, finances are always sort of at the tip of the tongue of everybody. So again, you know, meshing well with that pro-immigration stance is an accessible education.
Sure. I'm picking up from that some really important things about being very proactive in the process,
Mm,
not necessarily leaving it to people who are good advisors in some ways, but you've still got to be proactive, you've still got to be on the case, and to understand a lot more about the country before you start applying.
mhm.
And then once you've done it, to prepare like hell, to really, you know, as you say, to be shifting money into accounts to make it look, to show you've got the money, won't
Right.
be enough because it doesn't
Mhm.
quite show what they want. So I think those are really important points about this level of proactivity and preparation that
Mhm.
have to sit behind this. I think that's always a good point worth making. I mean, something we've not talked about before is our internships. And
Mhm.
I know it's something that comes up a lot. People want to have a little bit of corporate experience in Canada, perhaps with a view to testing it out before they apply to stay for longer. Is that something you come across?
Yeah, sure. Internship, this is why I kind of mentioned that colleges in particular are great for international students, particularly because most college programs offer what they call cooperative education, which means that there are aspects of the education that are done in class traditionally. And there's also a requirement in order to pass the program that you go out in the field. And so it's sort of a nice little internship for you, made for you, made ready for you. So you don't have, you apply yourself, but the institution is required to provide a space for you. For instance, if there are a lot of international students interested in travel and tourism, um, at college will have a travel and tourism program, but as well, they'll have a co-op where, you know, maybe you do something in the service industry, or they send you to, let's say, a hotel, you know, a hospitality industry area. So you do have that opportunity to work. Outside of that, in a general undergraduate degree, there are careers. I mean, every university's got a careers department who can help assist with that, and there are third-party organizations who do try to assist international students. It's just not guaranteed. Whereas if you're in a Canadian college in a co-op program, you do get that kind
Yeah.
of guaranteed education and experience.
So for somebody who wants to test the water and
Mm.
actually do some work as well as just study, it seems an ideal combination.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and yeah, there are some students who will know what they want to do, and it's an
yeah,
MBA. There are some students who know that they want to study philosophy in an undergraduate degree. Great, but there are other students who may not want, or maybe have a more general understanding of what they're interested in. Maybe they want a business diploma. Again, there are opportunities for co-op there. So, for those who are certain of what they want to do, there are opportunities in universities as well as colleges, but for those, as you were describing, who want to kind of test the waters, who are really after the education, the experience, but also not quite sure what the industry is like, it's, you know, in practice, I think colleges are a good option.
so basically all round a lot of flexibility and breadth that perhaps you may not get in other countries.
Mm.
Brilliant. One thing that strikes me, now you're a lawyer by training. Taking law as an example, what makes a really good legal professional from your
Mm.
experience?
Well, yeah, I mean, in particular, um, it's a great question. It's a question that's very hard to pin down an answer for, but I would say, particularly as an internationally trained professional, and I am internationally trained. I went to the UK for my law degree, and I'm here in Canada now. I'm not practicing law, but I'm in the legal industry, let's say, and in legal education. Networking is very important. Sort of there are expectations that some people have that because I've done this really difficult, intellectually difficult and academically rigorous degree, that it should be understood that I have the qualifications necessary to have the job. And in Canada, that's not the case. If you're internationally trained, particularly, a lot of the work that's needed on your end is to network and find a group of individuals who share similar interests to you professionally, whether those are other internationally trained professionals or not. But I would say getting out there and sort of holding yourself responsible for creating your own professional network, even before you decide to come to Canada. I've spoken to many people who suggest that building a network on LinkedIn is a great way to start, but it's definitely something that you have to do. You know, for a lot of people, we've had help getting into university. We've had help while at university. We've gotten the degree, and then there's a lot of people, including myself, who say, "Okay, now what? Where's my help now?" And it's a confronting thought that you don't necessarily have that help. I mean, some people are lucky and they have individuals they know in the profession that they're interested in who can help them, but others, particularly newcomers to Canada, don't have that. So I would say keeping half an eye on building a professional network, creating your own personal brand, however that may be. I've seen really, really accomplished professionals building LinkedIn profiles and having video blogs or displaying their work, in whether even if it's artistic work or if it's a piece of writing, blogging, things like that, to kind of build a personal brand and network is so important, I'd say.
Great. Anton, thank you very much. We've condensed a lot into a really short time. And I hope we can persuade you to come back to the cafe and give us some more of your expertise as well, and perhaps to answer some of our members' individual questions.
Sure.
From the perspective of people watching, if you'd like to talk to Anton, work with Anton at all on anything that you're thinking of doing with Canada, get in touch with QED Cafe first. We'll put you in touch with Anton in due course. So, Anton, thank you very much indeed, and we look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. All the best.